Hi, Lexikla.
Shanti. How are you? Why don't you guys turn your videos on? It's just 4 of us. All right, Chana.
Hello, Venerable.
Are you at home?
Yeah.
Is your daughter there with you?
No, she's in Hungary. She's studying in Hungary.
Oh, your screen froze.
Can you hear me?
My internet connection is weak. Oh, now I can. Sorry. Looks like my internet connection is slow.
Yeah, could be. No, my daughter, she's in Hungary. She's not here. She continued for another year.
She's in Hungary.
Yeah,
What's she doing? Studying music?
Yeah. At the Frank Liszt Academy.
I can't hear.
She's
Okay,
studying music.
maybe it won't work until I'll keep our videos on. Sorry.
Yeah, I think I can talk and keep the video off. That might help. Yeah, I was saying that.
Yeah, you can.
Continuing in Hungary.
What were you saying, Archana?
She's studying music in Hungary at the Frank Liszt Academy. She continued for 1 more year because she couldn't come back because of the pandemic.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Interesting. Hi, Shanti. Well, now my internet connection is good. So.
Are you using the phone connection?
I am, yeah. I'm using my hotspot on my phone. Yeah. That's all we have here for internet at the house. But usually it's pretty good. But, you know, it's Tuesday night. Here's the holiday here at the monastery. So many of the monks will be online right now.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that's why maybe it's not so good right now. We didn't think of that when we were fixing the time for this session. I've been doing retreat the last couple of weeks here in my room. So I've been reading lots of different things.
Yeah.
And actually before I started retreat, because we had an exam this year on the life of the Buddha. I think I mentioned once before. So I was reading one biography. Well, not kind of a biography about the life story of Buddha. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Shanti, your screen is frozen. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
No, it's not frozen. I can see her.
Okay.
We can hear
so
you.
you can hear me,
I
right?
can hear you, Venerable.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I'm mainly speaking to Saket. So, because there's this one story I heard, I want to tell Saket about the life of the Buddha. Well, actually, no, it's in this book about many stories from life of Shakyamuni Buddha. But afterwards, it has stories about some of the patriarchs, the senior Buddhist monks who led the Buddhist Sangha in India, just, in the few hundred years after Buddha.
Mhm.
So one of them, I don't remember his name, but he's the Buddhist, basically the Buddhist monk who introduced Buddhism to Kashmir, according to this history. And so there's an interesting story about how this monk, he went to Kashmir. Yeah, I'm not sure which part, but and there was like according to this story, there was like a powerful spirit who was kind of the lord of that area in Kashmir. And so it was like a Naga, a powerful Naga king who ruled that area of Kashmir. And he at first didn't want this Buddhist monk to teach Buddhism there. So, so the Buddhist monk had to first he subdued this spirit by teaching him the Dharma and showing some miraculous powers or something. And then so he won permission to teach Buddhism in that area of Kashmir for a duration of, I don't know, several, 100 generations or something like that. But there weren't many people living in that area. So in order to provide a means for people to move to that area of Kashmir and live, then he needed, this Buddhist monk saw that he needed to create some source of income for people. So he taught the people how to pick, guess, saffron.
Oh, wow.
So apparently saffron was introduced into Kashmir by this Buddhist monk.
But
Saket,
it
can you hear me? So I was
saffron
thinking,
originated in Iran. I thought it must have come from Iran, right?
what? From Iran?
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, I mean, maybe in actuality, like this Buddhist monk kind of discovered that it grows, and I don't know, who knows? But in this, I want to get the book actually. I'll send you some photos of the pages too. It's okay. But in this one book, it makes it look like this Buddhist monk taught people how to pick saffron and how to grow saffron in that area of Kashmir,
Oh, wow.
and introduced Buddhism at the same time. So I was thinking maybe that was Saket in his past life. He was some person from that area of Kashmir.
So around what time is this?
This would have been around, I think, around the time of King Ashoka. So about 200-300 years after Buddha passed away. So that would have been about 100 or 200 BC. Yeah, I'd be interested to know if how much that story corresponds with the actual known history of Kashmir and when people settled there and so forth. But when was Alexander the Great? Now, Alexander the Great came to Kashmir around the same time, I think. Yeah. Anyway, there's another a Buddhist text. It's called the Teachings of King Milinda, I think. But it's also about maybe the same monk, I'm not sure, also about a famous Buddhist monk who goes to the kingdom of Bactria, which is partly in current day Pakistan, in Kashmir. And it's called the Questions of King Milinda, actually. And there's this king of that region who I think he's a descendant from the army of the Greek rulers appointed by Alexander the Great. And he's converted by this Buddhist monk who asking all questions about different things. Yeah, it's translated in English, the Questions of King Milinda.
Alexander the Great came to
Okay.
India around 300 BC, I think, 300 something.
300 BC or 300 CE?
Oh, sorry, yeah, 300 CE.
BC? Yeah, it should be BC, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, shall we start?
Yes, please, Venerable.
Okay.
Sorry.
Let's start with a little meditation and then, please, yeah. I can barely hear you, Shanti.
We can start the session, Venerable.
Shanti, what did you say? Okay,
Can you
yeah,
hear
that's what I
me?
was saying. We'll start now. I can, yeah. So let's do a little meditation and then we briefly reflect on the Four Noble Truths. So, yeah, turn your mind inward. Direct your attention at an object of meditation, your breath or your mind, or a visualized image of Shakyamuni Buddha, so forth. Try to focus your attention for a minute or so. And then visualize all sentient beings seated around you. So generate compassion about the suffering of all the sentient beings in the six realms, especially those who you know you're closest to, their parents, their siblings, antagonists, so forth. And try to generate the attitude of bodhicitta, taking on the responsibility for freeing all sentient beings from suffering. And therefore, I myself must quickly become enlightened and lead all other sentient beings to the state of full enlightenment. So in order to do this, we invoke the blessings and the guidance of Shakyamuni Buddha and our own spiritual teachers. So visualize Shakyamuni Buddha and your own gurus, space in front of you. And then think on behalf, in order to accomplish my own welfare, and especially in order to accomplish the welfare of all sentient beings. And I'll go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. In this life, in all future lives, until I achieve the state of full enlightenment, and go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. We can read this praise to Shakyamuni Buddha and then recite Shakyamuni Buddha's name mantra 3 times as a way of going for refuge. Compelled by great compassion, in order to dispel all wrong views, you taught the sacred truth to Gautama Buddha. I pay homage. So think from Buddha's holy body, light rays radiate out throughout the universe, making offerings to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and purifying all sentient beings of every negative karma, of every afflicted karma and afflictive emotions, cause of karma, and blessing you and all sentient beings to develop all the realizations of the stages of path to full enlightenment. And then an image of the Buddha, like lighting one body lamp for another, it separates from the Buddha and then absorbs into you, blessing your body, speech, and mind. And then the Buddha comes to the space above the crown of your head and abides there during this session, guiding you, reflecting on the 2 truths. And then we can briefly reflect on the 4 immeasurable thoughts. How wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to abide in equanimity, free from attachment to friends and anger towards enemies. May they abide in equanimity. I myself will cause them to abide in equanimity. Please, Guru Devi, grant me blessings to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to have happiness and causes of happiness. May they have happiness and its causes. I myself will cause them to have these. Please, Guru Devi, grant me blessings to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they be free from suffering and its causes. I myself will cause them to be free from these. Please, Guru Devi, grant me blessings to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to never be separated from the happiness which is totally beyond suffering. May they be never separated from this. I myself will cause them to be never separated from this. Please, Guru Devi, grant me blessings to be able to do this. Okay, so we can conclude our motivation there. So we continue with 4 Noble Truths. Shanti, this is session number what? Session number 8, I think. Anyway, it's many more sessions than I initially planned to do. Yes?
This is Venerable session number 8.
Yeah, okay, I thought so. So yeah, we'll try to conclude in another, like this session, the next session maybe. We'll try to finish in 2 sessions, 3 at the most. So yeah, basically I ended up going a lot more in detail than I planned. But this session we wanted to look at, just jump directly to the middle way consequentialist school. So remember, there's 4 schools: the Sutra school, Great Exposition. Sorry, first the Great Exposition school, then the Sutra school, then the Mind Only school, and then the Middle Way school. So within the Middle Way school, there's 2 main ones: the Autonomous Middle Way and the Consequentialist Middle Way school. The last time, I think we missed 2 weeks of sessions in between. Last time we spoke about the Autonomous Middle Way school. So the main, and so this session we talk about the Consequentialist Middle Way school. So we're looking at the 2 truths as they're presented by each of these schools. So just to, before I introduce you to the definition according to the Consequentialist Middle Way school. So first of all, the Consequentialist Middle Way school, why do we speak about last? Because their view of ultimate truth, of reality, is considered the most subtle and highest, which means the one that's actually correct of all the different views presented by the other schools. But in order to get a full understanding of the view presented by them, it's helpful to know about the views of emptiness presented by the foregoing 4 schools. So we'll look at several verses from Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti, and then some verses by Lama Tsongkhapa in the by way of looking at how the school views and thinks about and uses the 2 truths to meditate in order to uproot and abandon the root causes of samsara and of all suffering. So briefly, how do they distinguish the 2 truths? Is that basically ultimate truth is the subtle selflessness of phenomena and the subtle selflessness of person, right? So for this school, the Consequentialist Middle Way school, subtle selflessness means the lack of true existence, which is equivalent to the lack of inherent existence, which is the same as the lack of things existing from their own side, or existing by their own power, or existing through the force of their own entity. Those are all synonyms. So how do we understand that? The opposite of that, things existing from their own side, means that things are not merely imputed by concepts, but rather they have, basically it means this: when you search for a thing, say like laptop or phone or table, so that's it, those are all things. So the word laptop is a name of a thing, like the word phone, or the word phone or the word table is a name of a thing, right? So when you search for the actual thing, the actual laptop, the table, the phone, when you search for that thing, of course you can find it. But here, when you search for the thing that exists independently, not depending upon other things, not depending upon parts, not depending upon causes and conditions, and not depending upon the thought that imputes laptop or phone or table. When you search for like a laptop that exists independently or not depending upon the concept of laptop, you cannot find such a thing, right? When you search for the phone that exists from its own side as a phone without depending upon parts, without depending upon causes and conditions, but specifically without depending upon the thought that imputes phone upon a collection of parts, then you cannot find a phone that exists not depending upon the concept phone, right? So to stick with laptop, so as I've given the example before, then when you search for, if the laptop exists apart from, so basically if it has existence from its own side, which is the same as if it has a substantial existence, then it means that, apart from, totally separately from the concept laptop, without involving that at all, when we look for, a laptop existing from its own side, we should be able to find something that is not any of the parts of the laptop. Yeah, something very, and that exists. Yeah, basically something that's not any of the parts of the laptop and doesn't depend upon any of the parts of the laptop. Exists totally independently from those. Exists totally independently from the parts. Exists independently from causes and conditions. Exists independently from the concept laptop. Right. So when we look for it, we look outside the parts of the laptop somewhere else. For me, my laptop's right in front of me, so over to the right or the left or it's beyond or behind me. Of course, it's silly to look for the laptop any of those places, right? So, of course, the laptop actually is on the table in front of me. But then, if the laptop exists as independently from concepts, there should be some physical thing that when I look for, I can find and say, this is the laptop, right? So I can look at, any of the parts, the case, the mouse pad. That's not the laptop. The case is not the laptop. The motherboard inside, which I can't see, but I know it's there. That's not the laptop. The battery is not. The screen is not. Any of those parts. The cable is not, obviously. Any of those parts, the fan, which I can hear, that's not the laptop. So any of those parts of the laptop are not the laptop, actually. So then how does the laptop exist? It exists, but yet none of those parts are the laptop, but yet that doesn't mean there's no laptop. Obviously, there is a laptop. So how does the laptop exist? It exists as something which is labeled upon the collection of parts. So I look at this collection of different parts of the laptop, and they perform the function of functions that a laptop should. And then I label laptop on that, or somebody labels laptop on that collection of parts. And thereby, this one thing, one unified thing, laptop exists. Right? So apart from that, then there's just a collection of parts. Right? There is no laptop. So the laptop and the label and the concept, the label, the name laptop, and also the concept laptop, those things all come into existence simultaneously at the same time. So again, so back to ultimate truth then. So for ultimate truth, according to consequentialist school, then ultimate truth is the lack of, things lack of existing from their own side. Which is another way of saying the lack of things not existing by not depending upon being imputed by concepts. Right? So the way things do exist is as things which are merely imputed by concepts. Right? So they're empty of not being merely imputed by concepts, which means that they're empty of existing in some way that's more substantial than, something more than just imputed by concepts. So that lack of things existing from their own side, which is a quality of a person, a human being or an animal or another kind of person, that's the selflessness of persons. And that quality of things not existing from their own side, which is a quality of things other than persons, like a laptop or a phone or a table, that is selflessness of person, of phenomena. That's selflessness of phenomena. So for the consequentialist middle way school, they're different from all the other schools in that for them, the subtle selflessness of person and the selflessness of phenomena in either case, the object of negation, the thing being negated, is the same, right? It's things existing from their own side, or inherent existence. That's what's being negated. So the object of negation is the same, then the basis for the negation means the thing which possesses the quality of not having that object of negation, whether it's a person or a phenomena, the basis is different, right? In one case, for the selflessness of persons, the basis is a person. For the selflessness of phenomena, the basis is a thing other than a person, be the person's body, the person's mind, or something outside of the continuum of the person. All those phenomena, their lack of inherent existence is selflessness of phenomena. And a person's lack of inherent existence is the selflessness of person, right? So again, for the consequentialist middle way school, then the difference between selflessness of person and phenomena is just merely the basis of negation, or the basis of negation. So the thing upon which, on the basis, based upon which you're negating inherent existence. So if it's, so that's how they distinguish. Whereas for all the lower schools that, so the two lower schools that accept both selflessness of phenomena and selflessness of person are the autonomous middle way school and the mind-only school. So for those two, for those two schools, the mind-only school and autonomous middle way school, the selflessness of person and the selflessness of phenomena are distinguished by way of the object of negation. Right? So the object of negation is different for those two, not of the basis. Okay, so for so that's ultimate truth, right? So ultimate truth, according to the middle way consequentialist school, is things lack of inherent existence. So things being empty of existing from their own side. And then all other phenomena are conventional truths, right? So, you know, laptops, phones, tables, person, conventional truths. Our mind is a conventional truth. The five aggregates, you know, that are the constituent parts of a person are our body, feelings, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness. Those are all conventional truths. So everything other than ultimate truth, basically, is a conventional truth. Another way to say that is everything other than the subtle selflessness is a conventional truth. Or everything other than emptiness, I think you can say. Everything other than emptiness is, is a conventional truth. Okay, so that's, in brief, the difference there for the consequences of the way school. Yeah. I don't know, do you have any questions right off at this point? Otherwise, next is we'll look at the definitions of ultimate truth and conventional truth.
If we are muted, how can we ask questions? Hello?
I can hear you, Subhashini. You're not muted.
Okay.
Hello, Subhashini. How are you?
Hi. I don't even know whether I'm in the meeting because when I came in, this thing moved. So I don't even know where I am now.
You're in Bangalore, but you're also in the meeting. Can you hear
No,
me?
that I know, but I'm looking for my, all this time, I don't know what's wrong with this phone. It keeps moving away from its,
Oh, I can barely hear you, Subhashini.
sorry?
Because my internet connection is also not so good. So maybe if you could type your could you type your question in the chat? Sorry, I can't hear you, Subhashini.
I am not there, so
So-
how can you? I haven't yet.
I'll,
Okay, now I've come back.
we can come back to your question.
Yeah,
But for now,
I
I'm not
want
sure
you
if you
to.
can hear me. My internet is super weak.
I want you to give a, the
I want
focus.
to look at these
Hello,
definitions.
hello. Can you hear me now? Hello,
Shanti, if you can't
can you hear me now?
hear me at some point,
Subhashini,
Shanti,
we can hear you.
send me a message.
Venerable
Or
has
type it
a
in.
very poor connection, I believe. So there is a time lag when we speak and when Venerable can hear us.
Okay,
So-
so what? So what are you suggesting?
I think Venerable Legtsok has started screen sharing, but we are not able to view the screen yet.
Okay.
Lexicla, would you like to disconnect and connect back to the session? Can we try that? Are you there, Lexicla? I think he has lost the connection. He's not joined yet.
What's happening? Shanti, what's happening?
Right now, yes, Subhashini, please hold on. I'm just informing all the viewers, all the attendees on YouTube that Venerable Legtsok has lost internet connection, that he should be back soon. So soon after I do that, I will call Venerable and check. Sorry about the disruption.
How does just one become a small symbol?
You update your profile picture to that small symbol.
Shanti,
So I spoke to Venerable Legtsok right now, and Venerable said he's trying to connect through his phone. So hopefully that comes
I
through.
have understood, but how is it that some people have become just figures? So how does one do that?
You mean the profile picture?
Huh?
Are you referring to the profile picture, like so?
No, I'm talking to some people who have, like Archana is just one circle and one something below, some form below.
Okay, Lexicla is in.
Audio. Hello.
We can hear you, Venerable. I think we can hear you.
Okay, good. Oh, but see, now the problem is I cannot share my documents because I don't have them on the phone.
Okay, so
What about the
I can-
question? I thought you said you wanted us to ask a question.
Yeah, I did, but then I couldn't hear you. So what's your question, Sebastian?
You see, you've been talking about each of these schools, but you have not given us the commonly used versions, which are, you know, the Prasamangika, etc., or you're using the terms which are all in English. So if you could give the equivalents of it, that would be nice.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, the Great Exposition School is Vaibhashika. The Sutra School is the Sautantrika. Mind Only School is Chittamatra.
Chittamatra, yeah.
And then Autonomous Middle Way School is Swatantrika Madhyamaka.
Madhyamika.
Prasangika Madhyamaka. Let's see. I wonder if I can turn my video around. Yeah, I can. Great. All right. Maybe this will work. Can you read that? You probably can't though. No, it's backwards.
Venerable, I can share my screen, so
Oh, do you have the document, right, Sandy?
I do, yes.
Oh, great. Can you do
I
that
share
then?
my screen.
Share the middle way consequential school definitions. The two definitions of great. Yeah, middle way consequential school. First, the definition of a conventional truth. The definitions are a little clunky. They're not so clear, which is why I just gave you the
Right,
essence
sorry.
first. But I'll just try to middle way consequential school. Yeah, there. The definition of being a conventional truth. Yeah. So there is an object that is found by a valid cognizer analyzing a conventionality with respect to which that valid cognizer analyzing the conventionality becomes a valid cognizer analyzing unconventionality, right? So you see, it's a little bit strange definition. So just to look at it again, basically, it's emphasizing that something being a conventional truth is dependent on it being known by a mind which is which is analyzing the conventional nature of things. And that mind being a mind which is analyzing the conventional nature of things depends upon it analyzing that phenomenon. So they're mutually dependent upon each other, right? So it's not like one exists independently from the other. So again, the definition of being a conventional truth is it's an object, right? That means it's something that exists. So things that don't exist are not conventional truths. That's the same for all the schools. It's an object that is found by a valid cognizer. So it's known by a valid mind. So which kind of valid cognizer? It's found by a valid cognizer analyzing a conventionality, right? So it means it's found by a valid cognizer that is not analyzing to see what is the ultimate nature of things, right? But just a valid cognizer that's experiencing ordinary things. So for example, all of our sense consciousness, like when we have an eye consciousness that sees the phone or sees the computer or sees the table, that's a valid cognizer, a conventionality, like it's the phone or the table or the laptop. It's not thinking about ultimate truth. So whatever we smell, see, hear, touch, as long as it's an accurate mind, it's not a wrong consciousness. As long as it's correct consciousness, means what the consciousness perceives and experiences actually does exist. It's not a hallucination. Then those are all valid the first moment of those is a valid cognizer, analyzing a conventionality. But then also our mental consciousness. Most things, when we think about things, we're not thinking about emptiness. We're not trying to understand emptiness. When we have ordinary thoughts and we know things, then those are conventional valid cognizers analyzing conventionalities. So a conventional truth is an object which is found by or known by a valid cognizer analyzing a conventionality. So now comes the flip side, with respect to which that valid cognizer analyzing the conventionality becomes a valid cognizer analyzing a conventionality. So it's because that valid cognizer analyzes that kind of phenomena that it is a valid cognizer analyzing a conventional phenomena, a conventionality. And it's because that object is the object which is known by that kind of mind, then it is a conventional truth, right? So it's a kind of it's a little bit of a circular definition in some ways. There's definitely room to debate with it. Could be some problems with that definition.
Now, this is the Prasangika Madhyamika, isn't it?
Yes, it is. The middle way consequential school for us English speakers. Also, yeah, this is Prasangika Madhyamika.
And also here in conventionality, there is a commonness that everybody can understand what is being said. For instance, if you say something is a laptop, I won't call it a telephone, I'll also call it a laptop. Hello?
No, that's one meaning of conventional language, but that's not what it means. That's not what's being talked about here so much. But there is kind of that sense is there, but that's not the main meaning.
But isn't it one of the characteristics of conventional truth?
What, that everybody knows what it's talking about?
No, that there's a general understanding about things. If you look at a biscuit and call it a biscuit, I'm not going to call it a pen.
Not really. No, that's not really. But more like the one meaning is that it's things that are known by the ordinary world, right? So when people are, apart from people analyzing, what is the ultimate nature of things, just ordinary things that people know in the world, those things are conventional truths, right? They're not ultimate truths. So let's look at the definition of ultimate truth here. So there, number 2, the definition of being an ultimate truth is an ultimate truth is an object found by a valid cognizer analyzing the ultimate, right? So it's found by this very particular kind of valid cognizer. This cognizer that's analyzing to see like what is the most fundamental nature of things? What is the ultimate nature of things? How do things actually exist at their most basic, at their deepest level, right? So it's an object found by a valid cognizer analyzing the ultimate, and it's an object with respect to which that valid cognizer analyzing the ultimate becomes a valid cognizer analyzing the ultimate, right? So they're found by this particular kind of valid cognizer, which is, a valid cognizer analyzing the ultimate, and that valid cognizer is a valid cognizer analyzing the ultimate because, specifically because, exclusively because it analyzes that kind of phenomena, which is an ultimate truth, right? So again, it's a bit of a circular definition. But to understand what that actually means in practice, think back to what I was explaining right at the beginning. That the lack of things, basically, things lack of inherent existence, or things, the characteristic that everything possesses, that they do not exist from their own side, or things do not exist independently of being imputed by concepts. So that lack of inherent existence is ultimate truth, right? So then there's a question, well, a thing that's a conventional truth, like a computer or a phone, does that have an ultimate nature? Is there an ultimate truth that exists as part of a computer, or as part of my table, or as part of one's mind or body? So even though, say, our mind and body, they are conventional truths, there's no question about that. But do they have, is there part of them, or a characteristic of them, or some feature of them that is an ultimate truth? And yes, there is, right? So like, if we stick with the example of our computer, so our computer is a conventional truth, right? It's an object realized by a valid cognizer analyzing a conventionality. So analyzing what, what is this object, right? It's a computer. So, or my eye consciousness seeing the computer. So the computer is an object known by that eye consciousness. It's known by my thought consciousness thinking about my computer. But so the computer is a conventional truth. But the computer, one characteristic of the computer, or quality of the computer, is that it lacks inherent existence. So that characteristic or quality of it, that is its ultimate nature. And that ultimate nature, the mere lack of existing from its own side, or the mere lack of inherent existence, that is an ultimate truth, right? So the computer is a conventional truth, and its lack of inherent existence is an ultimate truth. And those things are part of one entity, right? So the computer's lack of inherent existence is one entity with the computer, it means it's part of the computer. Just like the computer's being impermanent, the fact that the computer is impermanent is not the computer is not it, but the computer being impermanent does not exist as something separate from the computer. It is one entity it's part of the computer's entity. Or just like you could think the weight of the computer, like say my computer weighs like, 3 kilograms. The weight of the computer is another quality or characteristic of the computer, which does not exist. The computer is not its weight. The computer's weight is not the computer. They're different things, but they're part of this. So one way to say that is they're separate isolates. They're different things, but they're part of the same thing, right? And thereby, or rather, the computer's weight is part of the computer, and thereby one entity with it, right? So for any object, anything that exists, well, think of any conventional truth, anything that's a conventional truth, it has a nature which is its ultimate truth. So its ultimate nature is its lack of inherent existence, and that is part of that object. So that's what it means in the Heart Sutra. I know you've heard Venerable Namjom explain the Heart Sutra a couple of times at the center. So what in the Heart Sutra, when it says emptiness, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Form is not other than emptiness. Emptiness is not other than form. What it's talking about there is this fact that a form, say, and there it's talking about our body, our physical aggregate, that our form aggregate, that form aggregate is empty of inherent existence. But that inherent emptiness of inherent existence, which is a quality or characteristic of the form aggregate, is part of the form aggregate, right? And the form aggregate is one nature with that emptiness of inherent existence, right? So that's an example of how the two truths, they exist as part of one nature. A part of one entity. I mean, in general, but they exist in general only because they have specific instances, right? So it's not like conventional truth exists as some independent thing from its specific instances of it. So so anything that all the different objects which are conventional truths, they all have an ultimate nature, right? Means they all have a part of them, their nature, which is an ultimate truth, emptiness of inherent existence. So and then thereby, because of that, then ultimate truth does not exist as something independent from other things. Its existence is also dependent arising. Its existence also depends upon the existence of conventional truths, right? So conventional truth and ultimate truth, they exist in dependence upon one another.
So that's a dependent origination, isn't it?
Yeah, they're both dependent originations. Conventional truths are dependent originations. Ultimate truths are also dependent originations, and they depend upon one another. Yeah. So let's look at this next outline topic. 5, deepening the presentation of the consequentialist school. And then A. So there's one verse here by Chandrakirti, which from the entering the middle way, or the Madhyamakavatara, which explains more about conventional truth. So just look at it briefly. It says, because delusion obscures the true nature, it is a concealer, right? So here, well, let me read the whole verse first, and I'll explain it. Because delusion obscures the true nature, it is a concealer, that which is contrived by it and appears to be real, the Buddha spoke of as true for a concealer, and fabricated entities are merely conventional. So concealer here is another term for, actually in the definition of conventional truth, the Tibetan term that's being translated as conventional is kunzo. Kunzo. Kun means all, and zop means to conceal, right? So another way of translating that term into English would be truth for a concealer, or a veiled truth. Instead of conventional truth, you could say a veiled truth, or truth for a concealer. So what does that mean? It means something which is true. So this is kind of another meaning of conventional truth, or another way to explain the meaning of conventional truth. So conventional truth is something which is true for a mind which is affected by a concealer, which means a mind which is affected by ignorance, which means basically a mind which has the appearance of true existence, or the appearance of inherent existence. So to tie that to this verse here, it says, because delusion, so here delusion means the ignorance grasping at true existence, or the ignorance grasping at inherent existence. Because delusion obscures the true nature. So it's because we have ignorance grasping at true existence, then that causes us to have the appearance of true existence, or of inherent existence. And that blocks us from seeing the lack of inherent existence, right? So because delusion obscures their true nature, then that ignorance grasping at an inherent existence is a concealer, right? And that which is contrived by and appears to be real. So in the face of that ignorance grasping at inherent existence, phenomena which are contrived by that ignorance, or they appear to be real, they appear to be truly existent in the face of that ignorance, the Buddha spoke of as true for a concealer. So that's what conventional phenomena are truths for a concealer, right? They're that which is true for a mind which is distorted by ignorance grasping at inherent existence. So the Buddha spoke of as true for a concealer, and fabricated entities are merely conventional. So it's the phenomena which are fabricated entities are merely conventional. So it means phenomena which are distorted such that they appear to be inherent existence,
by ignorance, they are merely conventional. Those are conventional truths, right? Whereas, so to contrast that with ultimate truth, so ultimate truth is something such that when we realize it, so the main mind realizing, ultimate truth is the yogic direct perceiver. So for the yogic direct perceiver realizing ultimate truth, it does not have the appearance of inherent existence. So that yogic direct perceiver, it clears away this false appearance, which is cast by the ultimate concealer. I mean, it's cast by the concealer, the mind grasping at inherent existence, right? So to that yogic direct perceiver, which directly realizes the lack of inherent existence, then inherent existence does not appear, right? That mind realizes that all things are empty of existing from their own side. And so in the face of that mind, there is no appearance of things existing from their own side, right? So that's why then that emptiness of existing from its own side is an ultimate truth, because it's the object directly perceived by that ultimate mind, that yogic direct perceiver.
But yet we live in the conventional world.
I'll come back to your question a little later, Sebastian. I want to explain just another verse, another couple of things.
Okay.
Conventional truth. Oh yeah, the next point: conventional truth and dependent arising. Right. So everything that exists is a dependent arising. But especially conventional truths, it's because they exist in dependence upon parts. They exist in dependence upon causes and conditions, and especially because they exist in dependence upon imputation by thought, that they have an ultimate nature, right? And it's because they lack existing from their own side that it's possible for them to exist in dependence upon other things. It's possible for them to interact with other things. So if conventional truths existed from their own side, like if my computer, for example, if it existed from its own side, we have to think about what that means. So again, it means when you search for this thing which is a computer independently of anything else, from its own side, then you should be able to find this singular thing, which is the computer. And that thing, it cannot have a relationship with anything else whatsoever, right? So that thing, if it exists from its own side, it cannot be, so if there's a computer that exists from its own side, it cannot be related to the keys of the keyboard. It cannot be related to the motherboard. It cannot be related to the touchpad or the case or the screen. Why can it not be related to any of those things? Because those things would all be independently existent as well, and they would be different, right? They would be inherently different, which means they would have to be able to exist totally separate from one another. They would have to stand alone, exist on their own as things different from one another, right? So that if there's an inherently existent computer, then it would have to be able to stand alone on its own without depending upon the motherboard, the case, the battery, the screen, and so forth. So that's what it would mean for it to inherently exist. Because, and this is not something we're just creating. It's not like, it's important to recognize when we're meditating on emptiness, we want to be careful not to just make up like a straw man and then knock him down, right? It's not like we're just creating some kind of idea about what inherent existence is and then refuting that. Rather, we need to come back again and again to our own experience and see, how is it that things actually appear to me naturally, right? So what the Buddha is saying is that things appear. So the computer, when we're not analyzing, the way the computer appears to us is as if there is a real computer out there apart from my concepts, right? That is not reducible to just something that's merely imputed on its parts. It looks like it's something more than that. Like there's a substantial, independently existing computer that exists separate, exist in a way that's not just dependent upon its parts and not dependent upon concepts, that exists by its own power, from its own side, through the force of its own entity. And that when I search for it, I can actually find, this real thing out there. But we know when we search for that kind of real computer, that all we find is a collection of parts, is individual parts, a collection of parts. And then we label computer upon that. So if you separate from those parts, you cannot find a computer. Within those parts, you cannot find a computer. And the way the computer exists in relation to those parts is as something which possesses all those parts, and as something which is imputed upon that collection of parts, functioning as a computer. And then finally, I'll explain this verse in C, outline heading C, conventional truth as a path to realizing ultimate truth. Right? So sometimes people tend to think, well, that if, ultimate truth is the ultimate, it's the ultimate nature of things. So that's all that's important. Then I don't have to worry about other things. If I just realize ultimate truth, then that's enough. I don't have to pay attention to anything else. And thereby they diminish or undermine, or they don't take as important conventional truths. But so here Chandrakirti is emphasizing that conventional truths are like a stairway to realize ultimate truth. If ultimate truth is like the top floor of a building, conventional truths are things that we need to understand better and better and to realize in order to eventually realize ultimate truth. So here he says, conventional truth is the means, while the ultimate truth is its end. Those who fail to know the distinction between the two will enter wrong paths through false conceptualization. So there's different ways to interpret this verse, what he's talking about. But probably the most important one is that, in order to realize ultimate truth, first of all, it's important to realize that ultimate truth, like I was saying before, it exists as a quality of other things. So like the computer's ultimate truth of the computer is its emptiness of inherent existence. And the computer being empty of inherent existence depends upon the computer existing in the first place, right? If the computer doesn't exist, then the computer's ultimate emptiness of inherent existence does not exist as well, obviously. If the computer does not exist, then the weight of the computer does not exist. So the computer having a weight depends upon there being a computer. The computer is not its weight. Its weight is not the computer. But the two depend upon each other, right? So just like that, the computer, there being an ultimate truth, which is the ultimate nature of the computer, depends upon there being a computer. So ultimate truth depends upon the existence of conventional phenomena existing in the first place. If there were no conventional truths, there would be no ultimate truth, right? So in that way, that's one way that first of all, we need to understand how things exist, right? Conventionally, and then we can go on to understand their ultimate nature, ultimate truth. That's one way that we can, realize ultimate truth, independence upon conventional truth. Another way is that in order to realize ultimate truth, first we need to know about logic and reason, how that works, right? That's all conventional truth, logic and reason. How that works is conventional truth. We need to understand how our mind works and how things appear to our minds. That's conventional truth. We need to purify our minds of obscurations, right? Which means, most of our obscurations come about from harming other sentient beings and from following anger, following attachment, following selfishness, following arrogant pride, and so forth. So we need to reduce all of our afflictive emotions and stop harming other sentient beings. We need to abide in pure morality in order to generate concentration. So we need to practice the higher training in ethics by refraining from harming other beings, in order to practice the higher training in concentration. So Shanti, you can go back to you can stop share screen now. Yeah. So we need to practice the higher training in ethics in order to practice the higher training of concentration, in order to practice the higher training of wisdom, right? So that's another way. So the higher training in ethics, higher training in concentration are conventional truths. And then the higher training in wisdom is dealing with ultimate truth. So, and especially we need to understand the law of cause and effect and stop creating causes for suffering and accumulate merit, create causes for happiness and well-being, and the causes for generating realizations. That all depends, that's all conventional truth. And we also need to rely upon, a guru, a spiritual teacher, and listening to spiritual teachings and contemplating, combine listening, contemplation, and meditation. That's all conventional truth. So in those ways also, we need to rely upon conventional truths in order to eventually realize ultimate truth. Okay, so now if you have any questions, I'll take questions.
They're both interrelated, no? Conventional truth and ultimate truth.
Very much so, yes. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, oftentimes when Geshe Dorje Namdrol, I know when Geshe Dorje Namdrol is explaining the true truth, he emphasizes this phrase, which is that they are different isolates, but one entity, right? So the true truths that they're different isolates, it just means that they're two different things. They're not the same thing, right? But the fact that they're one entity means they're part of the same thing. So I mean, I find a very nice example of that is like, like I was saying, a physical thing like the computer and its weight or its volume or its temperature, right? So let's just stick with the weight though, like the computer or your phone. The phone and the weight of the phone, they're two different things, right? How do we know that? Because the phone is not just the weight of the phone, right? The weight of the phone is one property of the phone, right? And so the phone is not its weight. The weight of the phone is not the phone. And yet those two things, they're inseparable. They exist as part of the same thing, and you cannot separate them. And they do not exist independently or separately, totally separate from one another, right? If you destroy the phone, you destroy the weight of the phone as well, right? If you destroy the phone, you have to destroy the phone as well, no? Well, I mean, that's a little bit debatable, right? Because the weight of the phone depends upon it being, on Earth, it's being in a gravitational field and so forth. Like that. But as long as the phone is on Earth, you could say, then the weight is part of it. The volume of the phone might work better. It's a little bit more clear. So as long as the phone exists, it has a volume. I don't mean the volume like the sound being higher or lower. I mean it's occupying space, right? Occupying a measurable amount of space. That's a property of the phone. So the phone and its volume, they exist as separate isolates, two isolates, but one entity. They're one entity. Another question?
Could you tell us what two salient points?
Let me give a chance to Archana, Dilshad, Sakit, Shandikopanat, and I don't know, whoever else is there. If they don't have any questions, then it's your turn again.
May I, Venerable?
Please.
Yes, so the earlier schools we were discussing mainly about lack of autonomous substantial self, right? And now we're saying lack of objective existence.
Yeah, from the Sutra school on up, they all talk about the lack of, for the Sutra school, their main, their ultimate truth is completely different, but their selflessness they're talking about is the lack of, Rangitupa, autonomous, substantially existent person.
So what is the exact difference between autonomous substantial person and objective person? Because autonomous substantial also we say that it is a phenomena which does not depend on something else for its existence, right?
Well, not quite, not just because for the Sutra school, the person, well, sorry. Well, it means basically for the Sutra school, that kind of self, if it existed, it would be, let's see. Well, basically for the Sutra school, they when you search for the person, you can find something that is actually substantial existence. So they accept two kinds of person. One that is substantially existent, which is the stream of the mental consciousness. The stream of mental consciousness, which goes from life to life, that is a substantially existent person. But it depends upon its parts, right? But it exists not, but it doesn't exist just through the power of mental imputation or through the power of concepts. That's the main difference, right?
Okay.
For the consequentialist school, everything exists just through the power of
only through imputation of concept. Yeah, I think that's
only
the
through
difference.
imputation, and in no more substantial way than that. There's nothing more than that. Whereas for all the lower schools, from the autonomous middle way on down, when you search for, the inherently existent thing, you have to be able to find something. You can find something. Otherwise, the thing does not exist, right? So for the other schools, all the other schools, when you search for the person, for example, that the stream of consciousness, the stream of mental consciousness, which goes from life to life, that is the substantial existent person, right? And that's not merely imputed by concepts.
Yeah, the merely imputed is the difference.
Yeah. And so it's important in that phrase, merely imputed by concepts. The merely is a negating term. So what merely negates there is things existing from their own side or by their own power. So for the consequentialist school, that there is not one atom of things existing from their own side or by their own power. So the merely imputed means things are imputed by concepts and there is nothing from the side of the object whatsoever.
As in 100% subjective. 100%.
Well, I mean, but you have to be careful what you mean by 100% subjective, because you usually start thinking like mind-only school, as if everything is just a projection of the mind, and there are no external objects. So it's not, the consequentialist is not saying everything is just a projection of the mind, but rather everything depends upon labeling by the mind. There's a subtle difference there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, probably, among the four schools, probably the mind-only school view is the most difficult in some ways to understand. It's very complex. And they say for understanding the consequentialist school, it's probably most important to get a good understanding of the mind-only school and then look at the difference between those two. That's where you get a lot of subtlety of our understanding of what emptiness means, according to the consequential school, by comparing it to the mind-only school. So, I mean, I want to advertise here before we end. This is a great place to advertise. The Dalai Lama, His Holiness Dalai Lama, is going to teach on October 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. I don't know what days that falls on. I think it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. In the morning from 9 to 10:30, and he's going to teach on Tsongkhapa's a text by Lama Tsongkhapa called "The Essence of Eloquence," distinguishing the interpretive and definitive meanings of the Buddha's teachings, of the sutras. So in that text, Tsongkhapa gives an extremely detailed presentation of the mind-only school, and then compares that with the autonomous middle way school and the consequentialist middle way school. So in that text, Tsongkhapa mainly presents these three schools: the mind-only, the autonomous middle way, and the consequentialist middle way school. And he compares how each of those schools distinguish basically the two truths, by way of distinguishing which of the Buddha's teachings are definitive teachings, right? So definitive teachings means that the Buddha teaches the final view of reality, which means he teaches ultimate truth. Whereas which of the Buddha's teachings are interpretive teachings. So interpretive teachings of the Buddha means that in general, the Buddha mainly teaches conventional truth as opposed to ultimate truth. So it's a very difficult text. And so, His Holiness is going to present it in only 3 hours. So he's just going to touch on a few of the main points, but he'll definitely be touching on some of the points we're discussing here.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Dilshad, Saket, or Shanti, Gopinath, do you have questions? Otherwise, I know Subhashini is waiting. Okay, Subhashini, looks like it's you. You still have a question?
Yeah.
Okay, what is it?
Could you give us two salient points which distinguish the Prasangika Madhyamika from the Swatantrika Madhyamika?
Sure. The main one is that, for the Satantrika Madhyamaka, or the autonomous middle way school, then while things are imputed by concepts, there also has to be a degree of things existing from their own side, right? So so for the autonomous middle way school, while things they do exist independent upon concepts and conceptualization, yet they also have some degree of existence from their own side. Whereas for the consequentialist middle way school, there is not one atom of things existing from their own side. So things do not exist at all from their own side. They exist only through the force of being imputed by concepts on the basis of imputation.
I'd be very grateful if you would use the words which are normally used, because like the Prasangika Madhyamika and the Swatantrika Madhyamika, because I find it difficult to connect it with this consequentialist and whatever,
No, I'm going to use the English. I prefer to use the English. Then sometimes I use the Sanskrit. So a second salient point. Oh yeah, the other one is that, so when according for the autonomous middle way school, when you search for a thing, when you search for an inherently existent thing, you must be able to find something to point to and say, this is that thing. No, you must be able to find something more than what's just imputed by concepts. Whereas for the middle way school, when you search for the thing existing from its own side, or you search for an inherently existent thing, you cannot find whatsoever, right? So when you do the analysis, looking for a thing outside of its collection of parts, within its collection of parts, there's no need to find that thing at all. Rather, they don't find. All you end up seeing is that the things exist by way of being imputed upon a basis of imputation, which is upon their basis of parts. There's no further existence than that.
Now, when you're on your debate courtyard,
Okay.
I'm sure you use the Sanskrit words.
Mhm.
You don't use these words, isn't it? The consequentialist school, etc.
What
So,
language do you think we debate in?
sorry,
What language do you think we debate in?
in Tibetan, isn't it?
Yeah, so we use the Tibetan terms. We don't use the Sanskrit terms.
Okay, but you do use words like prasangika, madhyamika, and swatantrika, madhyamika, isn't it? Whatever
No,
you'd like to call it.
we say Uma Tagyora, Uma Rangyupa.
Sorry?
We say Uma Tagyora and Uma Rangyupa.
No, but we are taught that in the CKSL, no? As prasangika, madhyamika, and like this. So that's why it's a little difficult to connect with this English way of describing them.
I don't find it difficult at all. I've been teaching at CKSL since 2004, and I've always used the English terms and used the Sanskrit terms as well, mix them up.
But that's because you're a scholar and you've been there
You got
for
it.
14, 15 years. Well, we are not scholars, we are just novices and we are learning. So, it becomes a little difficult.
That's why I'm explaining to you in English, because I feel like it's easier for people to understand in English, because most people are not familiar with Sanskrit terminology.
You mean these words are not used, prasangika, madhyamika, and the other words? And chittamatra and all these? I thought those are the words that are used when we are taught.
The English terms are used as well, Sebastian.
Sorry?
The English terms are used as well. They're both used. The Sanskrit terms and the English terms are both used.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Have a good evening. Okay, so let's dedicate now. So Shanti, can you yeah.
Legtsok, I forwarded you a question
ahead.
from one of the YouTube participants.
Okay, 1 minute. Where's the chat here?
Okay.
Okay, this one, let's see. It is about perception of our 5 senses. Is that true? It is about perception of our 5 senses. Is that true? No, that's not true, basically. It's not, I mean, let's see, how do I get back to close? I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, it's a quite vague question, right? I'm not really sure what. Also, is it true that language is also perception based upon our cultural, experience and knowledge? Hold on. The first question is it is about our perception of our 5 senses. Is that true? Not really. I mean, the difference between, I mean, if the way our 5 senses perceive things, that's one kind of topic. But I mean, what is important is that, things appearing as if they exist from their own side, it appears to our 5 senses. That is the case. So it's that false appearance that we need to recognize. So it is important to analyze how things appear to our 5 senses, right? To our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body sense. How is it that things appear? Do they appear as if they're merely imputed by the mind? Or do they appear as if they have some external, independent reality, power of existence, right? As if they exist from their own side. So that's important to analyze. And then also, is it true that language is also perception? Well, language is not perception. No, language is the way we communicate with each other. Perception is the way our mind engages with objects, right? It's different things, but they're interrelated. Is it true that language is also perception? based on our cultural experience and knowledge. So both of those, I mean, the language we use is based upon our culture and knowledge, of course. If we don't know French, we can't use French. If we don't know how to speak French, then we don't really know the kind of worldview, the kind of way of looking at things in the world that, you know, people of French society have, right? For example. So those things are all interrelated, but that's not exactly what we're talking about either. And then it says, I mean that parts exist from their own side, but then we create understanding of dependent arising based on our perceptions of our five senses. Well, also no. The parts do not exist from their own side. Because when you do the same analysis, it looks like the parts exist from their own side, but when you analyze, so just to go back to my example of the computer, yeah, this is a common mistake we make, right? When we analyze to see, well, what is there an actual computer, you know, existing from its own side, not just imputed by my mind on a collection of parts. Then we analyze, we say, okay, well, the screen is not the computer, the case is not the computer, the battery, the motherboard, you know, the touchpad and so forth. Each of those parts are not the computer. And then the whole collection of parts, is that the computer, right? No, also because that's the thing upon which we impute computer on that collection of parts. And the computer possesses the whole collection of parts, right? So the thing that possesses the collection of parts and the collection of parts cannot be the same thing. One possesses the parts and the other is that which is possessed by the part possessor, right? So then it might seem like, well, but the parts of the computer, the touchpad, the screen, the keyboard, the motherboard, so forth, those exist from their own side. But if that were the case, then when we look to see, you know, the motherboard or the battery existing from its own side, when we try to find that thing, we should be able to find one, you know, solid thing which exists independently from or not depending upon anything else. And rather, you know, when we look at the motherboard, we just find, you know, I don't know the names of the motherboard, the parts of the motherboard as well, but there's all the circuits, the transistors, you know, isn't the chip is part of the motherboard, I suppose? I don't know, the computer chip. And then, you know, there's that green plastic that they put all the circuits are embedded in. So there's all different parts, none of which are the motherboard. The motherboard doesn't exist separately from those parts. Rather, the motherboard is the thing that we impute upon that collection of parts that has that specific kind of function, the function of a motherboard. And then you analyze the parts of the motherboard. Oh, sorry, my display is frozen. Well, I hope my sound is not frozen. I can't do much more than that. Is my sound audible, Shanti? Yeah, okay. So,
Yes,
but anyway, in short, no, the parts don't exist on their own side. If you do the same analysis on the parts, you also cannot find anything existing from its own side. And you go down and down and down. For your physical things, you go down to the level of atoms. Mental things, you go down to shortest moments possible time, you know, which is infinite. You can always divide further. Anything, its parts, you analyze down further and further and further. So there is no bottom, right? Although we innately grasp, you know, there being kind of a bottom, but there isn't. So that's why they say meditation, when you analyze correctly, then it's like, you know, recognizing all things, the big things, the small things, the parts, the possessors of parts and all the parts, all things lacking inherent existence. It becomes like meditation on space. It becomes a very space-like meditation. And also this, anyway, this feeling of separateness between, also there's a doubt, well, who's doing the analysis? Who is the meditator? So this sense of separateness between the one doing the analysis and the thing being analyzed, the meditator and the object of meditation, that also is just an imputation by mind. So that also breaks down. Anyway, we should stop here. We all have all of our other Tuesday evening things to do tonight. No. So, yeah, let's dedicate. Can you just share your screen, Shanti, and go to the last 2 verses in that document? There's just the last verse of prayer from His Holiness, and then that long life prayer for His Holiness. So think of all the merit we've created and rejoice by trying to understand the true truths according to consequentialist middle way school, Madhyamaka Prasangika. And reflect, rejoicing in our positive bodhicitta motivation at the outset. So we pray, in short, may all sentient beings be free from every form of suffering and have every happiness up to full enlightenment. I have to go mine. As long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. And then, so this long life prayer for His Holiness. The wish granting, wish fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. It's right down at the bottom of the document, Shanti. Oh, sorry, it's not on your version. Sorry, you have an older version. Anyway, may His Holiness Dalai Lama have long and stable life, as well as Kyabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And especially I want to pray that the new director, Aman Bansal, new director of Choka Sumling, may he have a successful, term. May all his work as director go well. In short, may Choka Sumling Center flourish, and there be harmony among all the participants. And may all the center receive all the necessary conditions, volunteers and financial support and so forth that it needs to offer the Buddha Dharma now and in the future to sentient beings in Bangalore and throughout India and so forth. And may CKSL continue to please and fulfill the wishes of Lama Zopa Rinpoche and His Holiness Dalai Lama. Yeah, and especially thanks again. So while welcoming the incoming director, Aman Bansal, then thanks again to Shanti Yajnik, who's been solely and wholeheartedly dedicated to leading the center as director for many years. And thanks again to Shanti Yajnik for all of her hard work and support over many, many years. Yeah, so thank you all. And I hope we can meet again next Tuesday. I hope we have better internet connection. If we keep having problems with internet connection at this time, maybe we'll have to reschedule this session for I think if we schedule on one of the other days of the week, we'll have better internet probably. So anyway, we think about that. Or maybe I'll try to improve the kind of connection we have here at the house. Anyway, thank you all. And thank you for Shanti Gopinath for hosting the meeting tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Legtsok.
Okay. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, Venerable.
Yeah, thanks, Archana. Bye-bye, Dilshad. Bye-bye, Sudashni. Bye-bye, Satya.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye, all our friends on YouTube. I forgot about you.
Yes, they also have said thank you to you.
Satya is moving now.